Hello and welcome to Dell's Gaming, and this is from the Depths Designer in a slightly different position to what we normally are in. So in this particular episode I'm using a different planet which is supplied as a on the Steam Workshop, which is Imperium Age of Sail's version 2, and I'm going to be looking at doing some campaign work in there, but on a starting point is I need to build some ships, and there's restrictions to this particular campaign in the size and weaponry you can use. And also one area of ship history I like is the old sailing ships, and I really like building ships that use sail. In the normal campaign they are severely overmatched, but at least in the start of this Imperium Age of Sail campaign it's possible to use some sailing ships. So first of all I thought I'd go through basically sailing AI and how to get your ship sailing and working reasonably in the environment. So we're running, most of the settings are similar to the normal Netta. There's a few changes, but I'll go through that when it comes to it. So ship AI, this ship itself, first of all you need to just make sure that your ship is going to be balanced. It's not rolling anywhere. So if I bring up the UI, I've set the wave height to be very low at the moment for this testing period, just to test the basic situation. And you'll notice the roll's reasonable, you know, plus minus a couple, and that has been gained with down in the keel down below using lead and stone generally to do a keel. So if you're building want to build a ship that doesn't have a sailing, one thing is don't make it too shallow. Extend your hull down almost the same as you've gone up, so that gives you room to put some ballast down the bottom rather than having a great big ugly keel on the bottom, which you can do, and you've noticed I've had to do a little bit here, but generally you don't want to be going down 10 or so, which is one way to do it, but there is other means which we're going to go through in this particular build. So next stage, what you need to do is on the AI side is you want to make sure that you have an AI card slot and an extra behavioral routine, which we'll go through in a second. And then on the AI you want to make sure that as usual adjustments are all down at 0 and it's set to be on water. And on the maneuver there's two things you want to do: add in a simple ship AI, and we'll just set this at some fairly common settings. So wander distance 0, order complete distance 150, because I'm going to expect that my turn rate on this ship is going to be around the 150 to 200 mark. So idle distance, and keep the pitch around 2 degrees because we don't want it to go too high, and use pitch controls. Now the reason you needed the extra behavior is under additional you've got add additional routine, and there's FTD sailing. Now there is sailing. Now sailing just adds custom tags, which you then have to set all of your spin blocks and winches to use the extra tags. But to be frankly honest, I've found it difficult to use and not always easy to use. If anyone's got a ship which uses that AI and all of the appropriate tags, please let me know in the comments down below, and I'll quite happily have a look through that, because as I say, I've had problems setting that up. You're supposed to be able to set up certain request position, sail position, etc., but it's been problematic. So in this particular video, we're just going to use the FTD sailing, which deals with a lot of that for you. It's not possibly as good, but it deals with it. Now, a couple of settings, or the only settings in this sailing, is simply to stop the ship rolling too far. So if it's rolled too far, the sails will be hauled in. So I tend to pull these down a little bit, 10 and 20, a little bit less than 15. Now the reason for these settings is for the guns. Depending on the angle you've got of your guns, they might only have a 22 degrees of angle, so allow a couple of extra degrees. You want to be able to elevate up to get range, so you do want to be within a 10 to 15 range for your weapons. If you're not worried about the weapons and you want to get a bit more speed, you can increase those a little bit further. So that's the AI setup, and all you've got to make sure is this AI is activated and toggled on. As you can see, you can toggle it on and off, which obviously turns the sailing part on and off. So the next bit to set up is the sails. Now, sails are quite an interesting subject actually if you look into it, because people have been using sails and sailing ships for basically thousands of years. So it's become quite what should we say, common, and they've been able to work out the best way to do sailing ships and out sails, and also the names for all of the different types of sail. It's quite interesting, some of the names, especially when it gets into rigging, etc., as to where the name came from. It's a mixture of French, Italian, Spanish, German, etc., and they all get pulled around and used at different times to mean different things. So sailing within from the depths, you can use under the water the sails, and there's two types of basic sail. You've got the main block, which is basically a triangular sail. It can be similar to a junk or a mizzenmast head sail or head sails, and then you've got your typical square rigs, which is your typical European square rigged sail, and these both have a different effect, and depending on which way the wind is coming from, and we're going to go through both of them and setting them up. The other decision to be made is your number of masts and your layout of masts. Now interestingly, there is different names, like a full rig is basically a square masted 3 masts or more using square sails with potentially head sails and mizzenmast, whereas a schooner basically is 2 or more masts with rigged mast, which is the triangular, but the main difference is the sails go perpendicular with the keel, the length of it, so they run down the length, whereas a square sail goes horizontal, so it goes across the sail as a standard location. There's lots of other different sail types, like brigantine, or well, a brig, which is a 2 sail square mig. So if you've only got 2 masts, you're a brig. If you have 3 masts, or more, you're a full, what they call a full rig. Then there's mixtures of using a schooner brig, which is 2 masts. One is a square sail and one is a rigged sail. So there's lots of interesting naming differences, depending on how many masts you've got. Are they square sails, are they head sails, or are they what they call rigged sails or triangular sails? Fun little topic. You could spend hours talking about all of those. What we're going to look at here though is 2 types of sail setup. First of all, we're going to start off with creating a simple mast, and we're not going to do anything too wonderful. and I say wonderful, to abnormal. We're just going to set up a very simple mast just to show you the two different types of sail that you can create. And just because it looks better, we're going to use pole so to put our mast on, sorry, our sails on, because it looks better. So the first block we need to look at is the square main square rig. So if we bring that up, now if we simply post it so that you'll notice only one side connects to the block on here, so we get the one which is next to the mast and we connect it on there. Now immediately what you'll see is there's a little green arrows. That means it's giving some sort of force forwards, which is good. So we then continue putting sail attachments. Now sail attachments, as you see, increase the size of the sail. So we're getting more forward force, and then we do the same down. And we're going to go down to, just go down to there, I think. And then we have a sail winch. Now the sail winch, as we can see here, we are getting, we're not too bad. We're getting a bit of lean, but nothing too much. But we haven't got any way to bring the sails in or out. They are stuck in that position. So if we now put in a sail winch, at the moment we're okay, and you'll notice the sails have gone up because our roll has gone over that 15 degree. Then it'll put the sails out again. So it will bring the sails up and down to try and keep us within that 10 to 15 degree of roll. So that's how the sail winch works with the square sails. Now I'm going to put one other little bit here, and that's the weather vane, so we can see which way the wind is. So we can see at the moment that wind is coming from straight ahead. So we're not getting much speed, we're still getting force. The sails don't really care too much which way the wind is, but we're not getting as much force. You'll notice that they're moving backwards and forwards, but there's a fair bit of force there, but not a great amount. So we're now turning to go downwind. You can see the wind is slightly starting to come from behind, and we're starting to gain a bit of speed now. We're up to 3 meters a second, and once we're heading down this way and the roll gets a little bit closer, those sails go out and you can see how big the green line is now, and there's 12 meters a second. So although they were working straight on, they were working a lot better when it was downwind, but upwind pretty poor, 2 meters a second as such. And as the next test we'll go crosswind, which means we're gonna go across the wind. So basically it should be coming at the side at us. Let me just bring up the menu. You can see at the moment we got a bit of forward movement, but it's not great. So definitely not ideal with the wind to the side or to the front using these square sails. So the other type of sail is the standard sail main block, which does the more triangular type of sail. Now if I put one up without a winch just in here, and we'll make it so that it connects to the mast, you'll notice you've got this sort of it's almost junkish style triangular sail. In actual fact, I'm going to change it so it's actually connected to the not the mast, but there we go. So it's in that particular direction. So this is going into the wind. We have a little bit of propulsion forward, but these sails like to be back onto the wind. So if I put a winch on there, you'll notice this just gets pulled in when the wind is not directly behind. If I just get the wind directly behind us, so with the set wind fairly much behind us now, we've got quite a nice long green force arrow. If I put the winch there, you'll notice it stays up quite nicely and is propelling us along for just a single sail quite nicely. Now you can also put these in the reverse direction. So if I just duplicate this, and again we're connecting it to the spar, not to the mast, so we put that on there. It's gonna rake that in because that's not going into the wind, and we're gonna put the same on here. So now that we're going back into the wind, you'll notice the sail that we've put the opposite way round is giving us some forward force, which is quite nice considering the square sails didn't give us very much when we're going into the wind. It's not great, but at least it does work going into the wind. And this can be used on your ships by putting them at the front or the rear as a mizzen mast. If I just take that off there, just to give you at least some sort of forward momentum when you are going into the wind. But be aware, putting the sail winch on this rear, it causes it to go down and change when the direction of the wind is different. So final test is fairly much side on to the wind, and unfortunately neither mast really wants to come out in this particular situation because it's not facing into the wind. Neither one is really giving it much motive power at all. So end results with these triangular sails is they seem to be very particular as to which direction the wind is. They work well if the wind is slightly behind them or behind, or you can face them into the winds in this particular direction and use them as a head sail, which is one of the ways I tend to use them. So anyway, okay, that all said, let's come up with some good sail systems, and one other final section using the square sails. In general, I think the square sails are more effective in general, and there is a way to make them turn into the wind which looks quite good, and that is using a spin block. So what we're going to do is a new object, a spin block, and we're going to put it just here, and then we're going to build our mast again, and we're going to give it a reasonable mast here. And give it a mast top, and then we're going to give it a couple of sails. Now I'm going to split the sails up into two, I think, here. Let's do one about here. We'll just give us our second line. And we're going to use the square rig block and make sure it's connected to the mast. There we go. And oops, let's put some tops on them because they look nicer with the proper sail tops on them. There we go. And now we shall put the sail attachments on here. And then finally we'll put the winch down. Where should we put the winch? We'll put the winch just there. Now it doesn't matter if you put the winch here or on the end. I'll put one, just to show you, I'll put one on the end and one on the bottom, and they work just as well. So they should winch everything in. And now, because this is on a spin block with the sailing enabled, the spin block turns basically to face into the wind. So it's actually going to face side on about 45 degrees onto the wind. The wind is over there. It's going to try and find an angle where the sails will work, give you motive force, and not send you over the particular angle. At the moment we're rolling a lot, so we're now going into the wind fairly much, and the spin block's trying to find an angle where these sails will actually work to give us a little bit of forward movement without forcing the ship to roll. If we now go into side, we'll go to the side of the wind. So as we start going side on, the spin block's turning us to face effectively the wind direction, and then the winches are bringing the sails in and out to try and keep our roll not too bad, not going over the 20. It's obviously having a problem. We've got quite a lot of sail here, but we're it is giving us some motive power if we look at those. And then finally, if I just go with the wind,
moving now.
And the wind is fairly much always coming from the southwest, so if we now go with the wind, you'll notice the spin block angle is changing again. It's trying to stay, it's fairly much following the wind now, because we're going to be going effectively downwind fairly much. It's going to be directly behind us, so the spin blocks brought the sails almost directly behind, and then it will drop them. The winch will drop it down once our roll gets better and drags us along. So that's how to use a spin block. It's quite nice. Is it more effective? That's going to be the next test. It looks quite good though, the way that the sail turns around and is made to point in roughly the right direction. I think that looks pretty good. It sort of gives it a bit of a motive direction, and as I say, looks quite nice. There's a couple of tips to be careful of if you create multiple masts. Make sure that your ends, your spars of your mast, of your sailing spar, doesn't intersect another mast. Otherwise it will get stuck and then it stops working. Same, if anything blocks the main mast from twisting, it will cause a problem. So I've given the ship a full rig of 3 spin block square sails. And one of the problems which obviously happens is it does not want to stay upright with that amount of sails on the ship. So there's a couple of ways to get round this. One is put lots of lead on the bottom, which is what a lot of people do, and it does work if I just put enough lead. But we're also adding weight to the ship and also drag with all of that lead, It's not 100% successful, but at least it is now staying somewhat upright. So that's one way to put it on, and you can just keep on putting lead on there until you're happy. But this isn't my preferred way, although it works. But a more active way of doing it is to use underwater is a hydrofoil. Now normally we put hydrofoils going straight, if I just put the mirror line on, but if you turn them at an angle and then put them on, I'll just put 6 there, and then we're going to set them up so that they are set to roll left, spread to neighbours, and this side will go roll right. Now you'll have to check which way is correct, and the best way is to, if you turn on show forces, you'll be able to see which way this is trying to roll. So at the moment looks like they are trying to go it's the correct way. Now one downside is they only work when there is enough power, sorry, when you are moving. So we've got to get enough motive force, at least in the first place, which is where we are going to need a little bit of lead to get us into the airflow, for want of a better word, in the first place. So we'll put a little bit of lead in here on a keel. So that's bringing us a little bit upright. And then we're getting forward motion. Enough so that the and we can put a few more, I think we'll put a few more of these down just to be, and then just do spread. Same on this side, spread. There we go. We have got a ship which is sort of now steadying itself into the wind without having a massive keel on it. Still did have to put a bit, but not excessive, shall we say, which should help when we want to get speed up, and also the sheer cost of that. And finally is weight. Now this I prefer to doing the downward facing propellers, which is another way to do it, but I like these ways of using the hydrofoils. I find them quite nice. Now the only other bit I do tend to do is use a PID on them. By putting a PID in here, set about 5 seconds and increase the gain, it should just smooth out the roll a little bit, hopefully, and try to keep it a little bit more upright, rather than moving too far on the roll. At the moment I think we are, where's the wind at the moment? We're going directly into the wind. So the only problem with this particular setup is into the wind it has a poor thrust into the wind, but our roll is okay. Now what I'm going to do is create some alternative sail options, and we're going to see which one basically performs the best. So let me just get the ship sorted out, and we'll have effectively we're going to have a little race and see which ones perform the best for sailing using the standard AI and this format. And I'm going to try and keep the sail area the same on all of the ships, so I'm just going to have different sail designs. So now time for a little race between 5 different designs. First of all, we have the full rigged on turn blocks. Then we have the full square rig but not on turn blocks. Then we've got a hybrid, so we've got 2 masts on turn blocks and the rear mast is fixed. Then we have a schooner, so it's just using the other type of sail block. They're all fixed, not on turn blocks. And then it's another sort of hybrid mixture of everything. So we have the middle mast is on a turn block, and the rear is as well, but it's also got a mizzen mast using the triangular sail, and the front is affixed with square sails, but also has what you could class as head sails pointing out the front. So it looks okay. The rear is looks wise is a little awkward because that points into the wind, which is not what you wouldn't expect that to happen, but that's the way it's built, so that's what we're going with. We're just going to see. Now on the map I've given them all the same route, and we're basically going to see which one gets there first. So after the downwind leg, and basically the full turn block has taken the lead, was definitely performing better on the downwind. The schooner at the opposite level just did not keep up on the downwind. Now that they've done the turn, the fixed is sort of lagging a bit behind. The hybrid one seems to be catching up a little, and the topsail mizzen mast system over there is taking a bit of a wide angle in trying to avoid a collision. It's taking a bit of a wide berth, but is now gaining a little bit of speed. We're now in the crosswind, slightly upwind type of leg. So this is the cross coming straight south. We then do have the headwind leg. So let's see what happens at the next turn. And at the next turn, the full fixed square sail has actually taken the lead by quite a bit on that side wind leg, and is now on the downwind. The schooner has overtaken both the spin block and hybrid. The actual hybrid did actually almost turn over, and I had to add a little bit more lead. The turn block seems to be becalmed at the moment and cannot seem to get any position that gives the sails any sort of forward drive. And without any other type of sail, it seems to have got effectively becalmed. The hybrid with the top, the mizzen mast and forward sails. I'm trying to remember the name of them now, and I can't. My brain has gone. Has sort of stayed sort of even, although the schooner seems to have just be taking it. But yeah, the fixed sails seem to be taking the lead at the moment. We'll see if they can keep that on this downwind leg, which I think is most probably the worst, in theory would be the worst position for this, but we'll see if the schooner and or the headmast can catch up. And at the final turn, the fixed square sail has kept its lead. I think it may even have gained a little bit over the head sail hybrid version. So I think this did okay, but the fixed sail did better. And the schooner is doing okay, but not quite as good. There's not quite enough sail area, I think, for this to really catch up on this particular upwind leg. The hybrid is just entered the upwind turn, so that's certainly not doing great at the moment, and the full spin block is still becalmed, unable to find that forward propulsion to get it through on that that side wind leg. So let's see which one, see if either of the last two can catch up a little bit on this last leg. It's they've gained a good 500 meters on 500 and 800 meters on this leg. Let's see what they get to, or how close they can get by the time that the fixed ship can get to the final waypoint. And coming up to the finish line is the fixed sails. They have totally outmatched all the other groups. The mizzen is next at 1500. It's only just managed to reach that corner. The downwind leg was definitely the bit where the fixed masts seemed to work better than any other, although I think maybe there is some sort of hybrid which I'll look at that might work well. Yeah, that was interesting. Actually, not the result I expected. I expected one of the hybrids to work better, I must admit. I did not think that these simple fixed sails would work as well. Now, I don't know if it's something to do with physics and the way that they are designed in the game, that they're giving more power at the wrong wind angles or something like that, but it doesn't matter. This is the way the game is designed, so at least I know. It could be that the turning for the spin blocks is not ideal, and maybe it could be better with the sail position for the other AI, but for simplistic terms, for what I need for building my ships, yeah, this has shown that some just simple fixed square sails seems to do very well for moving your ship in all of the different directions. So yeah, that's a bonus. A nice and simple sail system. Anyway, if you have any other suggestions, I will actually say one thing. There is a gamey way of increasing your sail area, and that is you can have more than one layer of sails. You see here I have one sail. It is possible to put another sail directly in front or behind it, but that is a very gamey mechanic, and I certainly wouldn't do it because it doesn't look right. It looks ugly. This looks good. I think the ones with the turning sails look better, but this looks quite nice and is very easy to set up, and it fits in keeping with the game, using the mechanics as it is designed. I might just try this with a head sail and a mizzen mast, just to give that slightly better upwind performance, but otherwise, yeah, that's the design I'll go ahead with. As always, any comments about sailing ships down below. I will be building a few sailing ships using historical whilst I work myself through the campaign. These slower speed vessels with some nice cram cannons and simple weapons seems like a fun way to do some damage and have a bit of fun with the game. So hopefully in the next little while we'll see some videos coming out with some combat with sailing ships. But until next time, as always, keep playing the game and have fun.